But for those of you who mightn't have seen me before, there I am. So we're just going to share some ideas today about creating a visual theme. Now you do have the opportunity to ask some questions throughout. You have a question panel there on the right-hand side. There's a lot of people in today's session, so we're just going to keep the mics off just for today, just because we do have a good few people here. But please take the opportunity to use the question area on the panel on the right. Before we jump into it, I suppose I'll just explain why I chose this topic for the webinar today and why I thought it might be useful to share it with everybody else. We do a lot of the Articulate software training around Australia, and most of the people who come to the Articulate training are maybe trainers, instructional designers, subject matter experts, and most people don't come from that graphic design background. And this is something that I see a lot of people struggle with. And, you know, I myself originally started as a teacher, so I don't come from that graphics background. But there is an expectation for our courses to look good. So hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll have got some good tips about how to jazz up your courses a little bit or create a visual theme in your e-learning courses. Because I know for some of us, this can be quite a struggle. So in today's session, what are we going to cover? Well, we're actually going to start off first with understanding colour, how this affects us, especially because everything we do is so visual. We'll then have a brief look at the effect that colour has on learning. And this is something I suppose to take into consideration before we start designing our courses, before we get in and start building. We'll then have a look at some examples of design themes, what some of our team have done here at Be Online Learning, and how we'd also come up with a theme ourselves. So I'm going to run you through a little process. A couple of weeks ago, I just helped a team come up with a visual design theme using different authoring tools, and we'll be looking at that in today's session. So with this, looking at different authoring tools, I will be discussing, I suppose, how it could be used within Articulate or PowerPoint, but a lot of the same principles would apply to other authoring tools if you don't use those particular pieces of software. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into the first part. So I think we've still one or two people still jumping in, but we'll keep moving. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to use that question and answer area there on the panel on the right. Okay, we're going to run a quick poll, and I'm going to open up the poll screen, but everything we do is so visual. How long does it take for someone to form an impression about what they see online? So I'm going to open up a poll, so just bear with me for a second, and I'll launch this poll. So it's just cooking, so it should appear up on your screen any moment. All right, so I think people are having an attempt at the poll. So let's have a look and see. How long does it take for someone to form an impression about what they see online? So I'll just give people a few more moments to have a think. I think we're pretty much there. Okay, so back on to our PowerPoint. We'll just wait up there and we'll just share. The screen is just flicking now. So we'll just share on the screen what people have voted. So most people voted, I suppose, 1 second. Oh, it's pretty much of a bit of a mix. That's okay. Some Some people, 25% voted 3 seconds, 36% 1, 18, 50 milliseconds, and 21% 20 milliseconds. Well, this was quite interesting because I did a little bit of research about this, and there's not a massive amount of research, I suppose, relating to e-learning courses. It's more about websites, but we can still use the same sort of principle. What I found was it takes about 50 milliseconds to make a good first impression, and that was pretty frightening. You know, no pressure there. So we've got to think about most of what we do is so visual. How can we make that initial first impression, and how can we make that good first impression as well? So hopefully over the next few screens we'll get some ideas for that. If you have any questions or I suppose thoughts, again use the question area as we go through. First impressions depends on many different factors. Could be the structure, colors, spacing, symmetry, amount of text, and the font. So most of us are very familiar with that. If not, it might be a good thing to take into consideration, but most of us are pretty aware of that. But it's also about taking that and putting it into practice. We know what looks good, but how do we make it look good? And I think that's where I see, initially myself, I sort of struggled with that a little bit as well. All right, let's have a look at see who's in today's session and who has particular experience in graphics. So I'm going to do another poll. So let's get in there again. All right, so are you an instructional designer? Maybe you're more of an e-learning specialist. Maybe you're a graphic designer. Maybe you're a trainer. Maybe you're something else. And if you're other, please let me know in the question area. Yeah, Manisha, there is a research paper on this, and I can send you the links after the session to that research paper. Definitely very interesting. Not so much about e-learning design at the moment. I suppose there's a lot more research on websites and things like that, but I can still sort of take that into consideration. All right, so I think we're nearly there with our poll. Now this is really interesting. Simon, I love it. A bit of everything. Video shooter, editor, LMS manager, and that's exactly it. We're sort of a little bit of jack of all trades. And I struggled a little bit with this one because it was, how was I going to condense it all? So apologies if I didn't cover your role, but there is a reason why I'm doing this, and I'll show you now. So why I wanted to show you this is that most people either chose structural designer, e-learning specialist, trainer, other was quite a big one as well. And I can see from the question areas that it's things like nurse educator, training manager, a little bit of everything like Simon has there. What's interesting is that nobody selected graphic designer, and I'm kind of glad about that. That's a little bit of a relief. But it also means that I suppose most of us don't have that graphic design background, but we've still got to make courses and be a little bit of jack of all trades. So how can we, I suppose, get some skills in that area or improve our skills in that area? So thanks very much for that. That was very interesting. I think nobody has come from a graphic design or is a current graphic designer at the moment. All right, we'll move on to the next part. Again, we'll keep the session moving. I think David, we've got here, is a bit of a graphic designer, so that's great. So most people, I think, come from that structural designer, trainer, learning advisor. And again, it was very hard to, I was trying to think how I'd pinpoint down the different roles, but we got the idea. Okay, colors can affect us in many different ways. Many different ways. Now, I found this interesting because I started to think about color and what effect can this have on us. Before we even get into color for learning, I thought I'd just investigate a little bit more about color. So if you like facts, this might be interesting. The first one I got was red can make you hungry. The big red steak there, while green can suppress an appetite. So red can make you hungry, which is quite interesting. Now some of these are probably open to interpretation as well. I did find, as I was doing a lot of research for today's session, there was a little bit of controversy on certain things, but some of it I found quite interesting. The other one is the color red can make you want to gamble and raise your blood pressure. And that was interesting. I suppose I was thinking back to things like pokie machines, and you don't really see any blues. They're not all blues, that calming color. So lots of reds and oranges and yellows. So that was quite interesting. So if your e-learning courses are mainly red in color, you might be promoting gambling within your organization and not even know it. But there you go. I thought this was really interesting. There was a lot of crime in Glasgow in the year 2000, and they changed all the street lights to blue, and they noticed there was lower crime rates during that year. So I thought that was interesting. Again, blue, the calming color. So that could be something in your locality maybe to have a look at. Green is believed to increase concentration, and I thought this was interesting, especially that image of that chalkboard that we see there as well. I suppose some of that intentional design. So using green to help with concentration. I thought this was really cool. Men and women see red differently. Now, I didn't know this, but women have 2 X chromosomes, men have 1. For those of you who are nurse educators here, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I was just reading this bit of research again. What it means is men and women can both see red, but women have this other opisthin protein. And what this does is it allows us to see different shades of red. So for those women who are here in the webinar session today, if you've ever struggled with maybe a red lipstick and you really notice all the different shades of red, but maybe you ask a male friend which one looks better, they might think they all look better. So women, seemingly, from the research, are better at distinguishing different shades of red, which I thought was quite interesting because of our second X chromosome that we have. Okay, some cool facts about color. The last little poll I want to do is, we've talked some facts, but what colors do you like? So which color do you prefer most? And I'm going to run a little poll. So let's have a look and see. Now, I couldn't select all the colors, but I tried to choose the ones that come up quite commonly. So let's have a go with this. So you've got a few options. Just choose one. And let's see. Interesting. This is quite interesting based on the research that I've done. No black for you, Simon. No, I'll do the black the next time. I suppose it's just looking at, out of those colors, which ones are you drawn to most? All right, I think most people have voted, which is great. Okay, I'm going to share the findings. So most people voted blue. Again, I couldn't pick all of the colors. I would love to, but I didn't. I've just chosen a selection. And the selection I chose was based on a research paper that I read. So they gave it out to a small group of people. And actually, so we can see 45% of people chose blue. Dulux Paints conducted a color survey. And they found that the most popular color in the world is blue. And that was quite interesting because 45% of people here chose blue. Now again, I know not maybe your perfect color wasn't there, but it just gives us a general idea. I thought what was interesting is that they found that as we age, we tend to dislike orange more, which I found was quite interesting. So again, all of this is open to a bit of interpretation, but for me, when I design, I like to have a bit of, I suppose, background to what I'm doing and why am I doing it. So I thought some of these were quite interesting. If blue isn't your color, you're obviously in the other part of the world's population that doesn't like blue. So we'll keep it moving just because of time. Again, if you have any questions coming in, let me know. So what effect can colour have on learning experiences? You know, we've talked about a little bit of colour. What effect can colour have on learning experiences? Actually, I'll just go back because I'll just make sure if you saw that last screen I had there. I think I didn't show this last screen. It's popping up. That's the screen I had. I don't think I had the poll. I don't think I had the poll hidden. But that's, I suppose, what I got from the survey by Dulux Paints. It was part of a research paper that somebody had done on colour. And again, blue is the most popular colour. People tend to dislike orange as they age. So that's where I got that information from. It really is a minefield of information out there when we look at colour and colour theory as well. So I tried to sort of pick the best from it. So moving on, I suppose, what effect can colour have on learning experiences? So this is, I suppose, why most of us are here and are interested in. Well, there was another study I found by Mehta and Zhu. And in this study, they took 600 participants in the study. And basically, they let them look at screens. One group had to look at a screen where there was red backgrounds. And then I had another group who they had blue backgrounds. So they pretty much split them up. And what they found based on, this was done over a period of time, and they had to do different activities and read different types of information. What they found was the people who were in the red group were better able to complete tasks involving detail, processes, and accuracy. Whereas people who were in the blue group were fared better with creative, imaginative, and inventive tasks. So I thought that was interesting, and I suppose what I got from that is with people, red colours, your oranges, your warmer colours, that can help with things like memorization, even things like editing. Whereas I suppose your blue maybe looks at the imaginative, working on the imagination, the creativity side. So I thought that was quite interesting. So again, what I took from that at the end of that research, warm colours, your yellows, your reds, and your oranges, greater effect on attention and memory. They can give your design a positive, energizing feel. So again, thinking about that first impression with people, you've got a very limited amount of time. How are people feeling as they do go through your content or view your content? Blue or cool colours, greens, blues, purples, can give your work a professional look and provide a sense of calm. Blue colours can inspire creativity. So if you're working with that team to get the new ideas and innovation, do we tend to use more blue colours? And yes, we should, based on that research. So I suppose some things to think about. The next thing, I'm just going to show you some, I suppose, just screenshots that I took to, I suppose, reiterate what I was talking about. So orange in this example is used to give an inviting impression. So when they created this page, orange was used to give an inviting impression. On the next example, they've played around with colors, again creating that warm, energizing feel. The orange box draws attention to contents. So playing around with even the different hues and colors there as well. I like yellow and black. I think that works quite well. Simon, that one's just for you. There's your black. So again, it's all about, I suppose, getting ideas. What I like about this one, the light muted blue gives that calm impression. It looks a little bit like a Donna Hay cookbook, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So I think that kind of looks quite cool as well. And again, blue colors to inspire creativity. Again, in this area, you've got a greeny, organic color, and it's very appropriate for the content. So we're always looking at our context, and I think that's what somebody mentioned a little bit earlier on. It depends on the context. This one works very well, that earthy green color, that, you know, goes with the content there for helping with trees. Before, I suppose, we jump any further, it's always important to remember people who are colorblind. So research, and some of the research I've done, 1 out of 12 males and 1 out of 20 females are colorblind. Red-green colorblindness is probably the most common. I did actually read earlier on this week that people who live in the Asian population, actually in males that number is higher, and I found that out this week. So it's something to take into consideration. So for somebody who's colorblind, viewing this object on the screen would be very difficult. We wouldn't be able to decipher between the two. So that kind of comes in under accessibility and catering for our audience as well. If your audience is mainly male, a red-green colours together and quite strong together, people may have an issue with that. And a good way to get around that is to test it on a pilot group as well. One of the things, I suppose, which I try and teach myself is things like the colour wheel. And if you're not familiar with colour, I know we have some people who do have a bit of graphic design experience here today, but if you're not, it's no harm to get to know the colour wheel, get to know what primary colours are, secondary colours and tertiary colours, and understanding how they all work together and how they complement each other. Because again, what we do is so visual, understanding colour and what works well, and I suppose where everything begins. There's a lot about it online, about colour wheels and complementary colours. So again, you'll see on this little image where, you know, complementary colours, if a colour is the opposite, you know, your reds, your greens, it appears stronger and brighter. So I suppose for us as e-learning designers, that goes back to contrast. And so much of what we do on the screen is contrast and leading the eye to certain parts of the screen. So if you're not familiar with the colour wheel, it's always good to read up a little bit about it. There's a lot about it online, but it helps us understand colour and colour theory a little bit more. So based on that, I thought I'd show you some examples. So what have our design team been up to lately, and how have they sort of played around with themes and colour themes and visual themes? Well, I suppose a brief we got lately was we were going to create a nutrition course, and the brief was it needed to look like a Donna Hay cookbook. A few screens before I showed you something blue that was quite muted and looked like a Donna Hay cookbook. So this was the brief. Again, we had to work around with things like washed out contemporary natural images, and we came up with something like this. So again, it was sort of our design concept at the start, even things like the fonts, the images, and this sort of met the brief there. We've got two different types of fonts going on, that nice organic sort of pictures that you'd see with Donna Hay. I'm probably doing a bit of promoting for Donna Hay. I should probably stop right there, even though she does do some quite nice stuff. We've got some other screens here where you can use concepts such as, you know, a menu. The menu became our food, or the food label became our menu. So you can play around with things like that. It's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. So getting ideas from that. We talk about nutrition, food, menus. Even this one, the chalkboard, that earthy feeling to it as well, that organic sort of feel. So that's one idea. I'm going to show you another idea. And then how would you come up with those ideas as well? Yeah, Simon, that's a perfect example, that colour wheel, that colour picker, and I'll show that in a moment. The next one would be, we're all probably familiar with the Smart Traveller website. So they had a brief to create a course for the Smart Traveller training. If you're not familiar with Smart Traveller, it's basically what you need to know before you go away on holidays and in case something happens to you. So the elements that we were looking for was things like passports, travel items, airport, boarding passes. That became I suppose the concept. And the colours we had to work with was from the company logo, not the company, the organization's logo. So for those of you who are familiar with Smart Traveller, it's the greens, the blues. Maybe the blue is intentional there where it promotes that sense of calm before people go traveling. So that could be quite interesting. even I suppose what we see here on the screen, you know, playing around with these visuals, you know, the global image, even things that look like on an airport, a time board, things like your luggage, so your imagery there as well. I think that's just refreshing on your screens. And even on this screen, which is kind of cool, where you've got, you know, the passport, you've got like a postcard, somebody who looks like they're away, sitting on a nice beach. So again, they're just some of the sample themes that we've come up with. The map of the world can be used quite nicely there as well. Very simple map. I quite like this image, and very simple. So your eye is completely drawn. Again, the contrast, your eye is drawn to those blue options there on the screen. So some of you might be thinking, Ruth, that sounds great. That's absolutely fantastic, but I have to create a course in the next few weeks, and I don't even know where to start. And this is what we get a lot in the Articulate training. Where do I start? So I was helping somebody lately they were doing a course about electrical safety, and they just didn't know where to begin with the whole visual theme. They had their content, but they weren't a graphic designer. They were a subject matter expert, and it was their job to put the course online using an authoring tool and make it look schmick. Some of the advice I started off with was things like creating a mood board. So if we're going to come up with a visual theme, like some of those themes we saw a few moments ago, one of the ideas is maybe having a mood board or mind mapping, which I'll talk about. And I love this idea of a mood board where you're just basically putting together ideas that come to mind. They don't even, you may not ever use them. You know, you may not use all of them. But it's like for those of you who might use mood boards, a physical mood board, you could do the same in something like PowerPoint. And we were just sort of throwing together ideas for fonts, colors, backgrounds, those type of things. So everything that comes into your mind when I think about electrical safety, and you know those colors, those industrial colors, those grays, those yellows, the hazard signs, even the icons there. And I just did searches for those images. Another idea which I like, if you're not into the mood board, I love some of the stuff that David Anderson does from the eLearning Heroes community. Even if you don't use Articulate, they have some great resources that you can use in other tools. So it's not just for Articulate users. And he has these wonderful online tutorials about mind mapping. And basically you come up with ideas, everything from the typography to elements to colors to even looking at things like magazines. And that helps you come up with that visual theme. So for those of us who are not coming from a designer or graphic designer background, it gives us a place to start from. So one of the things, and this is something that's come up in the questions, is you could create a color scheme from using free tools online. One of those is Adobe Cooler. If you've used this before, let me know in the question area because I can see your thoughts coming through. If you haven't used it, I'm going to show you this because it's really slick. So what I'm just going to do is we'll have a little look at Adobe Cooler. And basically what it allows me to come up with is a color scheme for my course. Now what I can see here is basically I put together a screen. Some of it I got from the Articulate site, some of those backgrounds. But when it came to putting shapes and buttons and things like that on my screen, I didn't know what colors complemented each other. So this is when I use Adobe Cooler, and it gives me a color scheme here. And bear with me, I'm actually going to flick my screen. I'll just show you how that works very quickly. Actually, I'm just going to... See, there's one of the research papers that I have up there. I'll send out links to those afterwards. Okay. Adobe Cooler. So we're coming towards, you know, the end of the session, and I'll get through this as soon as I can. Adobe Cooler gives you different types of color schemes. It could be monochromatic, it could be complementary, it could be different shades. And that's something, the color just isn't black and white. There's so many other different sort of color schemes you can create. And these are the things I've learned, and It's been absolutely fantastic, and it's free. So what I could do is I can actually upload an image. So I'm going to go to create an image, create from image, and I have an image there ready to go. Basically, it's my background. And I just took a screenshot of something I'd put together on the course, and immediately it gives me a color scheme. So all those colors that complement each other. And then what I can do is I can go back here, and it gives me the RGB color codes. So that work is done for me. Again, you just need to be able to work the internet and upload a picture, and it gives you the color scheme. So it's all about making life easy for yourself. So then what you could do, and this is what I suppose I've done if I flick back to my PowerPoint. I've decided I want this color scheme. I like these these industrial style colors. Simon, there's a lovely black in there for you. But then, how do I use that in my e-learning course? How do I create a color scheme? So this would work, the next thing I'm going to show you would actually work in PowerPoint. It would work, I'm going to show you Articulate, but the same idea would work in PowerPoint as well. So I've got my screen here, and if I was to insert some shapes, they might be that blue color that automatically appears. But what I've done on the Design tab in Storyline is you can create color schemes. And one of those is the electrical safety one that you see there. And what I've done is I've created, I'll just show you. You can actually create all these accent colors. Every time you put in a shape, it has all these different variants or accents that you can use on that particular shape. And once you've done that, you can save it, which is really nice. And now, if I was to insert any shapes, I've got this color scheme. And I just did that now by inserting a shape. I'll do another one here. And I can go up to Format, and there's my color styles there. And I know, because of Adobe Cooler, that complements it. Maybe I'm not the best color expert in the world, but I've got a tool that can help me with it. So definitely make use of that. It's a nice free one. And then it's about using it. So the same sort of color themes would work the same in PowerPoint or other tools that you use as well. So I'm just going to flick back again. So that's great, but what about fonts? Maybe you're not too good with fonts. And I was the same as well. I probably didn't know too much about fonts. And being a former primary school teacher, I think I did Comic Sans to death. So I'm very traumatized after that. So I tried to stick away from Comic Sans. But now I know there's a whole new world of fonts, or typefaces, if that's what you want to call it. And some of the tips, I suppose, I've picked up along the way, and just from research from using fonts, and feel free to throw them in the question area if you have some. Never sacrifice legibility for creativity. You could have a funky heading font, but make sure the body font is legible. And the sans serif fonts work well in online. Sans serif means they just don't have the little lip at the end. I see actually in the chat area, in the questions, I have other teachers in here who are also now allergic to Comic Sans. Yeah, it happens. The other thing is, make sure your font matches your message. Remember your mood board. So that heading font could be kind of funky and give that industrial sort of feel. Or again, if you're going down the Donna Hay route, you want that cool, modern, fresh look. Your fonts could reflect the message as well. Don't overdo it with the fonts. You want to add value, not Vegas. So pick maybe 3 fonts and stick with them. That's more than enough. Sometimes it can be good, you don't want to go too big with the font because then it doesn't look professional. Try a 14. Some people say a 16. I've just always known never to go below 11. and I find that works well for me. But it does depend on the context as well. Great ones are, if you're looking for free fonts, 1,001 free fonts, and www.dafont.com. There's some good ones for downloading free fonts. And you can actually search for like industrial, and it'll show you industrial style fonts. So again, you could add that to your mood board or mind map and begin creating a theme. Using these colors, fonts, and backgrounds is great, but we want to make life really easy for ourselves. We want to all finish at 4 instead of 5. So it's all about being efficient in the tools we use and saving backgrounds, fonts, and colors as a design theme. So most of you might do this in PowerPoint. You can do the same in other tools, other authoring tools as well. And I'll just quickly show you where you would do that. So what I would probably do is I'd probably play around in Storyline. I'd work maybe having some slide masters. These are sort of built-in slide masters from Articulate. I'd apply a color and a font theme. And once I had that, I would basically save the current theme. And that means I could reuse that. I'm going to call mine electrical. And I can reuse it in all my courses so that every time I open up Storyline or whatever product I'm using from now on, it has this industrial theme in it, this electrical theme. Especially if you're going to be building lots of modules for lots of courses or for your audience, use the themes here, color themes, font themes, design themes as well. And that every time you go and open up your authoring tool, you can pick from your theme. Once you've selected your theme, so once you've come up with that cool theme, then it's time to maybe get in and build some reusable screens. So some e-learning designers find it useful to think about the layouts that they're going to need. And you can always just go ahead, even before you actually start with your content. Some people like to go ahead and build out title screens, introduction screens, objective screens, video screens, case study screens, quiz screens. And what that does, it helps with that consistency as well. So you've got now reusable screens so that when you begin to build your course, you've got that consistency, you've got a theme to work from, and it allows you now to focus more on your writing and creating that content, because the content is king. This should just be there as a platform to facilitate it. So having little, I suppose, techniques for us and the team here at Be Online Learning, we find it really effective. Always be thinking about how you could reuse those screens in future courses. So again, you could end up doing lots of it in your slide master, whether it be PowerPoint, Articulate, any other authoring tool. Leverage the power of your master, the slide master, so that again you can save the design themes and just every time you open up the tool, you just pick your theme, and again it allows you to focus more on the content rather than every screen, am I going to make it look like this? Will I change the colors? That's all set up at the start. Finally, we're just going to end it there now. Some things to remember. Design choices matter, whether we like it or not. It does, I suppose, affect how people perceive and process your content. If people can't see it, and I think somebody mentioned a little bit earlier, that was you, Margaret, white text to read in orange is hard. Some people find it like that. So design choices matter. Use tools that you have available. That's free. Mind maps, mood boards, colors, font. You can actually get in, and there's special tools to pick fonts that match, and they're usually free. It's like having things in your e-learning toolkit and having a selection of things that you can go back to all the time. Remember the eLearning Heroes community. Even if you never use Articulate products, they give away some great stuff. Backgrounds, fonts, some ideas. So get in there even if you don't use it. And if you struggle with design, keep it simple. Less is always more. We want to add value, not Vegas. And thank you. So we have come to the end of our lunchtime session. We've gone a few minutes over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hang around for some questions. If you have any thoughts, also feel free to add them into the question area. I see we've got some questions coming through, and yeah, and that's very interesting. The standard font is now Foundation. Very interesting in schools. I like that. I'll have a look at that. Thank you to everybody who attended today and participated in the polls, and also for taking the time out of your day and your lunch break to maybe listen to me and hear some of our ideas. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you got something from it as well. So thanks everybody for the session today. Remember, use the tools that you have available, make life easy for yourself, and have a great Friday. Thanks everybody. When you're ready to leave the session, you can go up to File and end the webinar, or leave the webinar, I should say. Sebastian, yes, we got a recording of the webinar, so that'll be available to watch again. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Manisha. Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, Shauna. Thanks, Kelleen. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Sebastian. And good to hear from you again. It's good to have familiar names in there. Hope all is well. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, John. Thanks, David. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Margaret, and good to have you in the session. And I think I've got to follow up an email with you, so I'll chat to you later on.